Monday. Yeah, are we all mentally here today? Because I wasn't about 10 minutes ago. I have invited Kate Ruttenberg. She's from our prevention program. She's a prevention community educator to come and speak on like a 2-day training, which will be tomorrow night too, for mental health first aid. And then they will get certificates after they've completed the 2-day, correct?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So we're going to be talking a lot about mental health. If they don't come tomorrow, can they make it up somewhere else?
I guess I can
Watch the video. Okay, so we'll do that too. That's the great thing about having a video. I totally forgot.
We have a pretty good bet coming tomorrow night. It snows, so we may.
That's what I was thinking about. So we'll see how that goes. Like I said, I will send you guys an email directly and let you know. I'll be keeping track of that.
Yeah.
So,
and text one of us if you're not sure, just so we're all on the same page.
do you guys have my cell phone number?
It's on your
Would you like
syllabus.
my cell phone number?
No, you do. No, you do. Because Becca texted us one day.
Well, she didn't text me.
Yeah, she hasn't gotten
so
two
we-
of my texts. So
That's
I'm wondering
awkward.
if the number is.
So I
So
think
if you would like my phone number, I will allow you to text me for tomorrow only. Area code is 269 719 7736.
Is there like a rule of thumb, like 6 inches or less?
So they say that they call it at 4 p.m. here, which the last time they called it, when they actually, the Rockland campus called it at like 12 or 2-ish. So you'll hear from me by 4. I don't think they have like I think,
this campus is 4 o'clock for night.
but how do they call it? Like,
Oh, if, well, they say if it's any of the highways are closed, but now they're saying if chain control is up on 80 and 267, they'll close it down because a lot of students don't have cars.
It's not late till it starts
Right.
heavier until later in the evenings. It's probably
Okay.
gonna be okay.
okay,
Yeah.
we will be hopeful.
Yeah.
I think it'll be fine because the temperatures are really warm. I think it's gonna be rain for a really long
It's supposed to
time.
rain all day tomorrow.
And they'll keep it open. So.
Cool. So I will let you take it away.
Okay, excellent.
Cool.
So before we start, you know what? I just read that before anyone can learn anything new, they have to feel safe, which I'm sure you kind of understand a little bit of what that means. But what this article was talking about was feeling comfortable, feeling safe. And when you meet someone new, like me, and that me meeting you all, we all need to feel safe in the room, getting comfortable, and an icebreaker is actually scientifically a great way to make people feel safe in a room. So it's kind of a cool fun fact. So my icebreaker is, so this is algae, and we're gonna learn more about algae later on today, but Algae has some questions on his shirt. And so you're gonna toss algae around the room, and wherever your right thumb lands, the nearest question, go ahead and read it out loud and then answer it. So they're just kind of like fun little icebreaker questions. So I don't know if you guys want to stand up. Let's just stand up in this circle. Why not? And then we can talk.
I like that.
Sorry, guys.
In addition to, actually before you answer the question, go ahead and say your name so that I learn your names. All right.
Okay. My name's Greta. Describe your dream vacation. I guess somewhere warm, sunny beaches type place is, yeah. It's a reality, but it's like still a dream vacation, yeah. Okay, all right.
My name's Mariah, and it says, what new skill would you like to learn? Well, right now I'm currently learning sign language, so I guess I'd like to get better at that.
My name's Becca. And it says, who is someone you want to meet? Michelle Obama. 100%.
I love that you didn't have to think about it.
Okay, my name's Tanya, and where is your favorite place to go? Probably Hidden Beach and Incline.
Oh yeah.
My name is Bonnie. Describe my dream vacation. Sorry, that's where my thumb was. Bahamas, no doubt about it.
There you go.
describe your dream vacation.
Everybody's got a different dream vacation.
I think as of right now, I probably want to go to some other country that has different culture than my own and explore it.
Nice.
Okay.
Everyone's like,
My name's Dara. What new skill would I like to learn? Ooh, that's a good question. Probably how to think on the spot a little bit better.
Where is your favorite place to go? Would be a brewery in my hometown. Oh, and I'd be
What new skill would you like to learn? Listening.
Okay. My name is Reina Brambilla, and say describe your dream vacation. My dream vacation is Hawaii. Okay.
We need to have like a destination CIT, right?
What is the weirdest thing you've ever eaten? Frog legs?
That's pretty weird.
describe your dream vacation. My goodness. I would say Greece for like a month. All right, anyone else?
Danielle. Throw it. Oh,
If you had a superpower, what would it be? Flying.
Yeah.
Everyone
Nice.
go?
No?
Cool.
That's
All right.
Perfect. Thank you,
Great, thank you.
LG.
Everyone, you guys can have a seat. Good idea. All right, so this is like a, what do you call it? No, it's copyrighted. That's the word. And it's like an 8-hour training. We're kind of condensing it into 2 shorter nights. So I'm going to kind of move through the slides pretty quickly. You will notice that there's some numbers on the bottom right corner. And I have brought manuals. Those refer to page numbers in the manuals. So I didn't order any for you guys. These are just extra ones. So if you guys really want a manual, I can definitely order them, and it's free of charge because you are in Tahoe State Alliance's CIT program. If you're interested in having a manual, let me know, and we can get one for you. It'll just be a couple weeks out. But I'm going to try not to use the manuals today just because everyone doesn't have one. So let's see. So I guess, yeah, basically what I want to say is even though it's copyrighted, we're kind of breaking the rules a little bit. And I'm saying that on camera because that's also breaking the rules. So here's the program overview. We're just going to talk about what mental health first aid is, why it's important, and we're going to go into deeper conversations about understanding depression and anxiety, which are the 2 most common mental illnesses. And today we're going to get through talking about suicide and some risk factors for suicide and symptoms of depression, as well as non-suicidal self-injury. So a lot of times people think that's cutting. We're going to talk about it's a little bit more inclusive. And then I think that'll wrap up today. And then tomorrow we're going to look more at panic attacks, symptoms of anxiety, psychosis, which is like schizophrenia is one example. We're going to talk about the bigger, so psychosis is actually not a mental illness itself, it's a symptom, but we're going to talk about what that looks like because it's a symptom in a lot of mental illnesses. And then mainly we're working on this action plan, so first aid action plan, and how to use that with these different mental illnesses. And if you see, a sign or a symptom of a mental health crisis, what to do about it. And that's what this, the action plan is all about, kind of a universal action plan with any crisis or non-crisis situation as it relates to mental health. In this class, we're going to be talking about a lot of different mental illnesses, but it's really important that you know that we are not diagnosing anybody. If we are, when we're using this mental health first aid, you guys are going to be mental health first aiders, and I guess we're going to talk about what that exactly means. But essentially, you know, you're just noticing that there's something going on, and then you're the first to respond, but you're not really diagnosing anybody. So can somebody read this slide for me? Yes.
Mental health first aid is the help offered to a person developing a mental health problem or experiencing a mental health crisis. The first aid is given until appropriate treatment and support are received or until the crisis resolves.
Good. And someone tell me what is a key word in that paragraph?
Offered.
Offered. Okay. Yeah. Nice. So that's important because you're just offering. You know, you're not telling anyone what to do. You're kind of offering suggestions. You're offering, you know, your service. It's a choice too. You can notice signs or symptoms of somebody struggling and not do anything. But if you choose to do something, you are, you know, offering that. So good. Anything else that stands out? Developing. Yeah. Who said that? Oh, you said that. Yeah. Yeah. Good. So developing a mental health problem, it doesn't necessarily mean that someone has a mental health problem. It just could be, you know, our mental health fluctuates. Everyone, you know, has mental health. We have those days, you know, we're up and we're down, and yeah, everyone's different. What that looks like, it could be just situational, or it could be long lasting. So mental health first aid is noticing that something is different about somebody else, and they could be developing a mental health problem. So good. And that's to notice that you have to be observant. Good. All right, so this slide is all about why mental health first aid. So what do you guys, why is mental health first aid important? What do you think? You can read the slides too.
Usually when someone's having like a mental health crisis, may not be thinking very clearly. So unlike something, well, I guess other sorts of crises you may not think clearly either. But I guess you need help right away.
Just being
something super serious.
Yeah, being the person that can kind of be in control and just kind of level with somebody. And, you know, because if someone's in crisis and maybe they're frantic and not thinking straight, you can kind of just be there with them to support them. Yeah, that would be really helpful. Why is it important to learn about mental health or mental illness? Yeah.
There's a lot of stigma attached to all of that stuff, big time. Like, you can't even say that you're on antidepressants if they're like, oh, you're suicidal. Mm-hmm. You're going to kill yourself. And you're like, no.
Right. No. Yeah. It's huge. There's a lot of judgment around mental illness and mental health problems. And, why is that? Where does that come from? Yeah.
Well, that's kind of the next one, like the professional help step. People don't always go to get professional help. So it's kind of, a community issue that if people are on their devices or whatever, feeling more disconnect to people around them, things can go unchecked. And someone having a mental collapse of some kind, like the quicker the intervention is probably more helpful than the professional.
Yeah, definitely.
But yeah.
Yeah. You might not. Yeah, there definitely is. A lack of people who really will say oh, I have a mental illness, I need to go see a professional. That's most likely not going to happen. It's going to be the people around them that see them and are going to notice something and are just going to be the first responders. It's not, professional help is not always on hand, but also because people don't know that they have mental illness and they don't know that you can get help, and that's partly because there is that stigma. What are some of those,
Well, what I heard you say is what's the importance of mental health, and obviously it goes hand in hand with physical health, emotional health, spiritual well-being, the whole cascade. So they're all connected. So if you're not mentally healthy, it's not very likely you're going to be physically or emotionally healthy either. So understanding the nature of your mind and how it interacts with your environment and relationships, it's really the foundation of being, of everything.
Right. Yeah, definitely. Thanks for sharing that. So that's why it's important for us to notice when people are struggling with their mental health, to then help them lead a more happy, healthy life. Going back to the stigma, because that's really kind of the heart of this this training is trying to reduce that stigma. What are some of those terms that you hear when it comes to mental illness? Crazy. Weak. What else?
Nut job.
Nut job, yeah.
Incapable.
Capable.
Oh, it's really like the pull yourself up by the bootstraps. It's not that bad.
Totally. Yep, minimizing it. Not that bad.
It's just in your head.
Just in your head.
What do you have to be depressed about?
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, other people validating it kind of thing.
Yeah. Other terms like psycho, just loony, yeah. Loony bin, yeah.
So it's kind of like those are misunderstandings that people don't want to identify with, so they don't consider themselves having a problem.
Right. Yeah. So there's all these negative connotations with having a mental disorder. And, that comes from our society, because we're throwing around those words all the time. It comes from the media, movies, right? A lot of inaccurate portrayals of people who have mental illness, who are suffering from mental illness. And then you compare it to like those who have a medical condition. So let's say, for example, someone who has cancer. What are some of the terms associated with somebody who is maybe dealing with cancer? Terminal, okay.
But I mean, I think the big thing is that when it's a physical manifestation, it's something people can see and they look at as being organic. The real challenge with mental health, it's inorganic, and therefore, much like even the discussion we had last week on traumatic brain injury, you can't see it. So therefore, it's not real.
Right. Right. I think someone said it. Yeah, it's all in your head. You see it. Yeah. Yeah, definitely. What about the qualities of somebody who? So you had said weak for someone who might have a mental illness. What about someone who has cancer? What would be some?
Fighter.
Fighter. Strong.
You can beat this.
Yeah, you can beat it. There's this encouragement around it. People kind of get behind somebody who's suffering and really, can gather around them and support them. Somebody who says, I'm depressed, it's more like, oh, okay, right? So it's a very different response we have. Even though, a mental illness, there is something physically wrong in the brain, right? So, but it's just, our perception of it is just very different, and we're just not knowledgeable about mental illness.
I think it's a really good point, because I think people have a tendency to be far more compassionate with something they can see and somebody else, and the compassion, and that's really a tragedy.
Right, and especially when people believe that it's something you have control over. Oh, well, you have control over your mental state, so therefore you can do something about it. Especially when it comes to like substance abuse disorders or eating disorders, that's when I would say that most people are saying, well, you have control over it. You can just choose to have a different, make different choices, when that's really not what's going on. So, mental disorder, we're going to just define it here. Someone read that for me.
Affects a person's thinking, emotional state, and behavior. Disrupts the person's ability to work, carry out daily activities, engage in satisfying relationships.
Yeah, so an easy way to think about, about mental illness and a mental disorder, defining it is just it disrupts the ability to live, laugh, love. So I think it kind of just speaks to what you were saying, it's really going to affect how somebody carries out their daily life. It is very similar to having a physical condition. It really is going to affect just how you live your life. And we need to start thinking about it that way. It's not so much that people have a choice over their mental illness. it's something they need to learn about and learn how to cope with it. And really important, it is diagnosable, which means it's treatable. So a lot of times people who are diagnosed with mental illness don't know that it's treatable, don't know that they can manage it, they can learn how to deal with it, because it's something, for the most part, well, I guess, I'm not really sure, it depends on what the illness is, but some are chronic, some are just for a certain amount of time, but whatever the case is, it can be treatable, or at least you can manage it, manageable. And that alone, just saying that to somebody who has a mental illness, just saying, you can get through this, I'm here with you, just having those encouraging words can really help someone and give them hope, because sometimes people don't know that they can manage it. So this is just some statistics. Like I said, anxiety is one of the most common mental disorders. And then, so yeah, about 18% of adults on a given year are diagnosed with anxiety. And then you've got major depressive disorder, substance use disorder, and bipolar disorder, eating disorder, schizophrenia. Down here at the bottom, 18.5%. It doesn't, it's not like all these are adding up to 18.5, so what's going on there?
More than one.
Dual diagnosis.
Yeah, exactly, yeah. And actually, I believe this number is not even including substance use disorder. So I'm not sure why exactly, but that's just how common it is. So it's almost like, 1 in 5. And down here it says only 41% of people with a mental illness use mental health services in any given year. So again, that kind of can go back to not knowing that they might need help, they don't have the support, and that stigma. So the impact of mental illness, let's see. Oh, here is actually where we are going to take your little quiz. Everyone's got a mental health opinions quiz.
I need one, please.
Okay. And what you're going to do is just take a few minutes, read through the questions, and you're going to choose agree, disagree, or you don't know, and then we're going to take a look at this at the end of tomorrow. Okay. So I've given everybody a diagnosis. Now, what we're going to do, this activity is called disability weights. And what we're going to do in a minute is you're going to stand up here and you're going to arrange yourself in the order that you believe is basically weighted less to, low to high when it comes to affecting someone's life. So you either have a mental illness or a physical condition, and so this activity is kind of like rating them as far as like how much they weigh on somebody, how much it affects someone's life. And it's actually based on a study that was done. So we're gonna just kind of see how mental illnesses compare, in a sense, to physical conditions as far as how greatly it impacts someone's life. So stand up. I know some people don't like this activity just because it's like you're comparing, but try not to think of it as comparing like, oh, this condition is better or worse than another. It's really just how much does it really impact someone's ability to live, laugh, love. So
Putting them in order?
in order of, let's say, less severe to most.
Yeah, you always ask to do people. But I don't know. But I may need a lot of
ability to
That's after that.
That's not a big deal at all.
Definitely more serious than that.
I would say breast cancer. But I feel like if you're
I would say breast cancer.
But mentally,
list of.
That made more sense to me than like true.
Yeah, that's what you said. You're after me.
That's physical.
I'd rather be depressed.
For the person? So they're gonna be kind of all mixed up.
Because if it's for you and you're like,
Probably. They're not gonna fit you your whole life, just when you first meet. I feel like I've worked with someone that she was super obsessed for like a year, but until she got out, it was more dementia.
Disabling over here
She didn't know.
Oh,
She was confused, so that should be, she's somewhere on here, but I don't know.
I would put that
this
closer, I would put that one closer to like severe depression, I think.
That's almost the most impactful, I would.
Paraplegia.
Really? You want to allow life.
Yeah. I feel like once you first find that out,
Yeah, you definitely come this way a little bit.
where do you feel comfortable?
I don't know, man. That might cause you to have that.
depression.
Moderate depression would be secondary to your
That's what I was thinking about.
paraplegia.
I'm gonna go to the left.
I know this is a tough one, especially, if you know somebody with, one of these conditions, it, can either be like, wow, no, this was really hard for me or for this person I know, or no, this person dealt with it, and was able to live their life happily and was totally fine. So
Sorry about that.
a lot of times it depends on our own personal experiences, but this is just on average, we're trying to think about how it impacts somebody. Okay.
Well, you lost 2 parts.
Yeah. It's just they're like sort of moving.
So that could be someone with a stroke.
All right, so, okay, so the key message, I'm going to read it word for word, is not to say that one health problem is worse than another, nor is it to say that each individual's experience is exactly the same with any physical or mental illness. So mental illnesses on the list are just as real and just as impactful as the other health conditions. So we often reach out to help people who, bring them a meal or some sort when we find out that they have a physical condition versus, a mental illness. So that's why, the point of this is just to see how much someone with a mental illness is also impacted. Their life is also impacted. So the weight is, after they did this study, on the lowest end is gingivitis. So good job, you guys. Then we don't have the card here, but then after that it would be mild asthma, mild vision loss, mild hearing loss, and basal cell skin cancer would be next. Then we've got uncomplicated diabetes, low back pain, and mild stable angina. What is that?
Heart.
Oh,
That's your heart and your vessels.
Okay, yeah, I'm so bad with science.
You're on the mental side.
And then we have epilepsy. Along with mild depression and hip or knee osteoarthritis.
Oh, that's kind of a big deal.
So right around there though. Then you've got mild panic disorder, spina bifida, and HIV seropositive. Then non-invasive breast cancer, along with anorexia and mild to moderate obsessive compulsive disorder in this area. Then you've got moderate depression and severe asthma. Did you know that one? Oh, okay. Along with multiple sclerosis and chronic hepatitis B with active viral replication and deafness. So that's where moderate depression fits in with that. Then severe vision loss. And the rest are other physical things. Then severe PTSD, paraplegia, and severe chronic bronchitis or emphysema. Yeah, they were kind of all on the same level, yeah. And then severe depression. And then severe schizophrenia. And severe dementia. Actually, those are right around the same. And then as well as quadriplegia, a stroke with multiple permanent impairments, and end-stage Parkinson's disease. So what do you guys think of this?
I'm really surprised that PTSD is there.
Yeah.
Mhm.
I think that
I'm
one was the
super
most
surprised about
surprising.
Did it say when the study was conducted? What year?
Not in this sheet.
It'd be interesting
Yeah,
to
because I feel
find
like in
that
the
out.
past 10 years.
Because
Yeah.
there's been so
They made a
many
lot of
chronic
PTSD.
medical, physical conditions secondary to this thing, that may,
Right.
and suicide, which is
Right.
Yeah, like this
skyrocketing.
is a like that causes this.
Right.
I mean, you can have this without, but that's why we were like, no, you're over here.
Sure, right. I think that's a
Because
really
if
good
I have
point.
that, I'm gonna have this too.
Yeah, yeah. Well, and that's one of the, yeah, definitely when you have also a physical condition, it could lead to a mental illness as well. So, or just a lot of these can kind of overlap and just kind of depending on the situation. So, I don't know, yeah, I don't know when this was done. I'm guessing the last 10 years. So maybe, yeah, maybe there's an update.
Because we know, like, the veterans, there's 25 suicides a day now from the veterans, just from the last Gulf War, not the one before that either.
Yeah.
So, and that doesn't take into account the rest of the population.
Yeah, and I think, and that might speak to just how new our knowledge is of mental illness and the impact of it, because, yeah, I guess it is kind of more recent.
I think something else I read is that now suicide is a leading cause of death with males below the age of 30, I think. And just when we learn about, domestic violence being directly related to this, and seeing the instance of domestic violence now, it's like a lot of them are choosing that way out.
Yeah, yeah, right. Well, PTSD is now it's more inclusive. We're realizing what it looks like. It looks very different, and different traumatic events can lead someone into having PTSD. So I think there's still a lot of research that can be done, with this. So this is just kind of a taste to see, how much it impacts someone's life. But with all research and all statistics, there's flaws. But go ahead and put those down on that table. Good job, you guys.
Just because I mentioned this, it's interesting, this goes way back to when I was in graduate school in the late 60s, early 70s, is they started doing autopsies on Korean War vets in 1950, 1951, whose mean age was 21 years of age, 20 to 21 years of age. And what they found is almost all of them had advanced atherosclerosis, and arteriosclerosis, heart disease, secondary to the stress from being in the war itself. So they start making a connection then to the amazing impact of the stress response to physical organic diseases. I mean, this is 68 years ago, and I still don't know why we haven't addressed that more. I mean, mental health is still so remarkably underfunded. It's probably, to me, it's probably the biggest challenge we have, because we need to start there in order to address so much of all the chronic diseases and everything else that we have.
Right. Well, like for me, it seems like a lot of it has to do with our culture, and I think kind of like what you said, just like pull it up by your bootstraps. Like it's very, that's just kind of what our culture is. Like you take care of yourself, and you got to be strong enough to just, no matter what you've been through, it's up to you to like get better.
Yeah, suck it up.
Suck it up. Yeah, but that's unrealistic. Yeah, and everyone reacts so different. When it comes to like resiliency, everyone reacts differently to trauma. And not to say that if you're more resilient or not, that you're stronger or or weaker. It's just I don't know. Everyone's different.
It really doesn't matter.
It doesn't matter, right? Exactly.
You're still having the effects of the issue.
Yeah.
The abuse is in the eye of the receiver kind of thing too.
Exactly. Yeah. What is traumatic for you is going to be what's different than for you, and for you, for everybody. We could go through the same exact situation, like a car accident or something, and one person could develop a mental illness and one person could be, could not. And it's just, it's kind of just, I don't know. There's no rhyme or reason really.
Another question about that result, like, can you just say, is that the actual impact?
So what they had here was
to
like
perception, or what is?
Yeah, what
in light of what we just said.
Let's see. So I think, let's say, they don't give me that many details on what this study was. Yeah, unfortunately I don't have that information. Yeah, but all they give me is like the weight of like how, like I think people were surveyed and like they kind of just said like how much it impacted their life.
People who had it.
Yeah.
Okay. That makes sense.
So I think it's like disclosing what the weight of the illness was. So that could be, skewed as well.
Yeah. Interesting.
Yeah.
Very interesting.
So disability refers to the amount of disruption a health problem causes. Again, work, carry out daily activities, engage in satisfying relationships. So this is kind of just recapping what that activity was about. Yeah, kind of just compare, like just to understand like how disabling mental illness can be, which I think we've driven that point home. This slide is about recovery. It's really important because it's just to know that recovery is possible. And when we talk about recovery, we don't mean, completely like never going to be a problem ever again. It's just someone's able to manage it and they're able to, maybe prevent crises from happening. And they know what to expect. They know how they are, and they know how to kind of just manage their illness. Say this all together. Assess for risk of suicide or harm. And also, as we're going through this action plan, we're going to learn it in this order. But when you're actually talking with somebody, having that conversation, it's not like a step-by-step thing. It's just to remember, what you need to check for. So assess for risk of suicide or harm. Everyone say this all together. Listen non-judgmentally. Give reassurance and information. Encourage appropriate professional help.
Encourage self-help and other support strategies.
Awesome. So who here has taken like CPR? Great. So it's kind of like a similar, acronym. Just that there's that to remember, right? So algae, this little guy. To help you remember that, to kind of go through all those 5 steps or the action plan. So we don't want to call them steps because we don't do them one at a time. All right, so the first thing we're talking about is depression and anxiety and how the action plan looks with somebody who might be experiencing depression and anxiety. So they are the most common mental illnesses. They have some similar signs and symptoms, and they frequently co-occur. If you have anxiety over a long period of time, you might also start developing depression. It's it's important to know that. What are some of the signs and symptoms that you guys are familiar with when it comes to depression or anxiety?
Negative thoughts.
Okay, yeah.
Become reclusive.
Yeah.
Lethargic.
Lethargic. Mm-hmm.
Motivation.
Mm-hmm. Lack of motivation.
Lack of interest.
Yeah.
Change of friends, all that.
What was that?
Friends too.
Yeah.
Social activities.
So just kind of antisocial. Yeah. What did you say?
Change in appetite.
Change in appetite. Yep.
Sleep patterns.
And sleep patterns change. Yeah.
Isolation.
Isolation. Yeah. Right. It's one thing to, it's, cold winter day and you're like, oh, I just want to snuggle up by the fireplace. That's okay. But if you're just like, no, I don't want to see anybody ever, right, that might be concerning. If someone's typically out skiing on a POW day and they're inside, that might be, something to look out for and check in with somebody. What about anxiety? Some other signs and symptoms for anxiety that you guys might know.
Breathing rates.
Yeah.
Excessive worry.
Excessive worry, yeah. Like those racing thoughts, things like that. I think what we're going to do right now is... actually, let's just go through these slides. So, major depressive disorder lasts for at least 2 weeks. And again, it affects someone's ability to live, laugh, love. When it comes to, this is just for you to understand how someone might begin to diagnose somebody, but again, we're not diagnosing anybody. If someone's, been kind of lethargic or having negative thoughts for over 2 weeks, definitely want to get them to see a professional, but don't, you're not going to say like, well, I think you have depression. That's, first of all, not helpful, and you are not qualified to diagnose anybody. But it's definitely concerning. Hey, I've noticed that you've been, not hanging out as much. You've been, kind of, seem a little down for a long time. Anything I can do, you want to talk about it. I'm concerned about you. So these are just some different types of, depression, but mood disorders. So depression kind of falls in that bigger category of a mood disorder. Have you guys all heard of bipolar disorder? Mm-hmm. Someone want to share what bipolar disorder is or what they know about it? Yeah.
There's 2 states. There's the manic state and the depressed state. The manic state can be really high energy, risk-taking behavior, that sort of thing. The depressive state can be extremely low lows. Mm-hmm. Suicidal thoughts, more of that isolating behavior.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I believe that one is a harder one to diagnose because there has to be those 2 extremes, and that can show up differently for a lot of people.
It's also one of the causative factors is an imbalance in the neurotransmitters. Amino acid deficiency is a pretty major nutritional aspect to it.
Sure, yeah. What's your background?
Medicine,
okay. That's awesome.
I'm not a doctor, but...
Yeah, okay, that's great, yeah. And then postpartum depression?
After baby.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so depression after a woman gives childbirth. So what is the statistic here? I had a statistic. What is it?
I just saw something that you can be 10 years after for you to fully have like nutritional everything back up and running, right?
Wow, 10 years. Yeah.
And that's probably, some people show signs up to 10 years, I guess, but that's news to me.
Yeah.
Because usually they're like, 6 months.
Yeah. So actually, so here I have up to 21% of women in the first year after giving birth have postpartum depression.
Yeah.
So which is, fairly high. And that's just within the first year. So that's interesting that it could even show up 10 years later.
Yeah.
So it's all,
Is that like different countries? Because I know I had postpartum depression, and the support systems, say in this community, is really crap. Like there's not a lot of community in that. Like in Australia, when you have a baby, you have to go to these community things. So I know for me, I was a skier and none of my friends had a baby, so I felt very isolated, and there wasn't that community. Facebook didn't exist, so I wonder if that is tied in with
the recovery and
just having the community and all the things to help you deal with brand new child.
I would think so. Yeah.
Yeah.
Like
Well-
proactive
Yeah.
approach to it. That's nice.
Yeah. So you're from Australia. That is where mental health first aid originated.
Oh, cool.
Was in Australia, and that is why the koala bear is the mascot. Yeah. I think it was fairly recent too. They did that they started this mental health first aid program, which actually Michelle Obama is. She's in support of mental health first aid for everyone, like basically for everyone to be trained in this. I think it was 2012 or no 2008. Mental health first aid for adults became like copyrighted or whatever, like a training program, and then in 2013 or 14, they created a youth mental health first aid, specifically for people who work with adolescents, and to notice signs and symptoms for youth developing mental illness.
Yeah, I'm not making a generalization, but if you kind of look at Australia, the fact that when they realized that they had a real challenge with weapons, they had a big weapon buyback, and there was a tremendous response, and their incidence of death by firearms completely plummeted, and they just had a very healthy response to it. And that is a smaller population; it's 30 million people in Australia compared here, but there's seems to be, in my experience with so many Australians, this sort of general kind of effervescence, just sort of a lightheartedness, the ones I've encountered.
Oh, here's a problem? Let's do something about it.
Exactly.
Yeah. So it's interesting.
I don't think we'll do that over here. Turn all off.
But we do have more taxes too. Living here, I've been here 21 years, and it's like the tax base here doesn't allow for all of this to be provided for.
That's part of the problem.
Yeah, we have a much higher tax rate, and you get stuff for it. And so it's like, it'd be lovely to have all this. Well, who's paying for all this services?
Sure.
All the things like postpartum. I talk to my friends in Australia when they had their babies, and my experience with theirs was totally different.
Wow.
Even how long you're in hospital, it's night and day. They just kick you out as fast as you can. Wrap up the bill, and just, there is the.
Well, 47% of the U.S. federal budget is to the military.
Yeah.
And our military is bigger than the next 10 developed countries combined. So we have, that, you need enough, but I'd say it sort of indicates that we have a tremendous amount of fear in our country.
So that's all really overwhelming. But what we can do about it is, knowing that there, like maybe the hospital, there's not a lot of, resources that we have, but you guys can be the resource for somebody, and knowing that someone might not have that support at the hospital, that emotional support that they need. If you know somebody who just gave birth, maybe even 10 years ago, see if they're okay. How are they feeling? So just showing that you care just more often. I think that's always a good goal. So here's some of the actually wait no. Now we're gonna play a little video. I think right now. Yes, we're gonna do So actually that's on. We're gonna watch a little clip of somebody who has depression, and what I want you to do is just kind of pick up on what are some of the signs and symptoms they talk about.
I am now the most miserable man living. Whether I shall ever be better, I cannot tell. I'm awfully forebode. To remain as I am is impossible. I must die or be better.
In the anguish of these words, one of America's greatest presidents, Abraham Lincoln, describes his lifelong battle with depression. Throughout history, many famous and extraordinary people have felt the pain and suffering of depressive disorders. Some of them have shared their struggles publicly to bring awareness to this issue that millions of ordinary people also experience. In fact, over 30 million Americans may be affected by major depressive disorder. The annual cost to the economy is billions of dollars. The cost in human suffering is immeasurable.
Going through it was like a roller coaster right through hell.
I felt that there was no way out. The pain was beyond description.
The doctor said to me, Michelle, I think you need a psychiatrist. This is getting worse. And I remember reacting, I don't need a psychiatrist. I'm not crazy.
Community life, family, friends, and workplaces all feel the impact of this debilitating illness.
I went to work depressed and was able to get through the day. When I came home, I got on the couch, curled up in a fetal position with a blanket, and I slept.
I felt the burden of the responsibility of our children. I was the primary caregiver because John just couldn't function.
I was also confused as to what I should do as a person, as a relative of a depressed person. Like, what was the best thing to do?
And depression doesn't discriminate.
They come from different socioeconomic backgrounds, different religious affiliations, different educational backgrounds. Depression is so ubiquitous that it really can be anyone. It could be myself, it could be you, it could be the neighbor next door.
Depression is often misunderstood and consequently misdiagnosed. Fortunately, in recent years, a clearer picture of the emotional and the physical symptoms of depression has emerged. Depression is a painful illness, and the pain is real. The good news is there is hope for all those who suffer and for the loved ones who accompany them on their journey through the darkness. As Alice knows from first-hand experience, when depression goes untreated, even the most vibrant and self-sufficient people can be devastated.
Hey, how are you? Oh, Paris. It's so good to see you. You're beautiful as usual.
My mom, before she was depressed, was a hoot. She is a very creative soul.
And we're having our fashion show on the 14th.
She has about 10 projects going on at any given time. She has a lot of friends, and I think that's part of what was so hard when she started to slip into that hole, is because people came to her when they needed help and advice, and it was just shocking that they couldn't turn to this person anymore, and that she actually needed them.
This is so hot, and you know what I like about these outfits? They're intergenerational.
In 2001, Alice experienced a series of stressful personal events, culminating with the fear that her sister may have been killed in the terrorist attacks of September 11th.
From the right window in my bedroom, I could actually see the two spires at the top of the World Trade Center, and I got up and looked out the window and saw all of this smoke. It was unreal. My sister was working in the World Financial Center. She almost lost her life to debris. After 911, I spiraled. It was just too much, one thing after another, after another, after another. I could sleep 20 hours a day to avoid experiencing the hell that I was in.
She could not get out of bed. It seemed like she was moving through quicksand or slow motion. Like, we just couldn't reach her.
I can only compare it to my body feeling like lead.
Because Alice missed so much work, she lost her job at a university where she had worked for over 30 years. Eventually, she lost her health insurance as well. Depression is a leading cause of disability and loss of productivity throughout the world. In the US alone, it is estimated to cost the economy $44 billion per year in lost productivity.
My church prevented me from getting put out on the street. They paid months of my rent. Things got so bad and so out of hand. The final humiliation for me, as a person who's always worked, at times had 2 jobs, was to have to go on welfare. What kept me from taking my life was that this would impact on my daughter in such a way. I could not do that to my daughter. But I must tell you, in the hell I was in, I felt death could not be worse.
One of the terrible risks of depression is suicide. And that makes it very necessary for people to seek help, particularly if they're having suicidal thoughts. It's much more common for men to kill themselves than for women in this way, but it's also more common for women to attempt suicide than men.
Each year, approximately 30,000 Americans lose their lives to suicide. And even when the consequences are not as dire, the pain of one person's untreated depression can affect a whole group of people.
Because I called you the other day, you weren't answering your phone. I'm sure your friends are calling you too. They usually cheer you up.
I just don't feel like talking to anybody right now.
Depression doesn't only affect the person who has the illness. Depression reaches every relative, every friend of the depressed. I was angry because I was thinking, just try to fight it. You're not sure how to help them. It's not something that can, be corrected with, let me write you a check and make it all better. And I think we're used to quick fixes, and depression isn't something that had a quick fix. I would have done anything, but I felt extremely helpless.
I don't feel like doing anything.
Okay.
But thank you, honey.
I wanted my mother back.
Alice's friends also wanted her back in their lives. Her friend Sandra did everything she could think of to help.
Sandra would pay utility bills for me, and I didn't even know they were being paid. Hey girl, I am so glad you were able to get over here today. Well, you know the babysitting stuff, so. Then she would come religiously with the food or whatever she could do for me. So what are you working on? Well, a couple of things. Number one.
Only now can Sandra really share with Alice how much it affected her to see Alice in such pain.
I didn't realize how painful it was for you. I do know that it was at certain points painful for me to watch, because I'm like saying, wait a minute, this is not the Alice that I know. And so how do you help people? So you do whatever you can. So if it's like bring you a meal, if it's, pay a bill.
One of the things I appreciated about you, although you may have thought it, I don't know, not fully understanding depression, but you never said to me, snap out of it.
I thought it. I did think it, and I kept saying, I don't understand.
Yeah.
But after seeing the extent that you were going through, days of not being able to get out of the bed.
I think you have to absolutely urge them continuously to seek help, professional, someone who's used to dealing with this. It is a disease. It is not something to be brushed off casually. And the sooner that depressed person can find help and get that support that they need, the sooner everyone in their circle can have that person back.
Though Alice's struggle was difficult, she persevered. She finally found a successful treatment plan through a program for people whose depression is difficult to treat.
With my spiritual connection, friends like you for one, family, concerned and caring professionals, girl, I was able to come up and out.
And better, and better.
You're such a precious.
It can be very difficult for the family members because the depressed person doesn't want to do anything about it. It's part of the illness to not want to do things in general, so they don't want to do something about their depression. They need to do what they can to help their depressed loved one get the treatment, stick with the treatment, keep going, not let them get frustrated, keep reminding them that there are multiple treatments that are often helpful, and just because one doesn't help doesn't mean the other isn't helpful.
this for? Okay. What were some of the things that stood out to you in that? Michelle, no.
That last part, that they don't want to do anything about the illness is part of it. So that's interesting.
Yeah.
And the no quick fix, like I kind of have a better understanding of psychology now and what psychiatrists do. There's kind of the joke that they barely are listening, you know, they don't really say anything, but the patient really needs to feel their feelings and talk about them to someone, and the pharmaceutical quick fix is just more numbing of it, so they can't get past the feelings to the healing, really.
It might be good like temporarily, but then like the deeper stuff.
Right, like the mood it's a mood enhancer maybe, but like before the video you were saying things can come back, and so
yeah,
relapsing could be a higher risk.
Yeah. Anything else that stood out to you guys?
Typically there is a trigger, you know, something in their lives, and they can't really wrap their head around it. They don't know how to handle it, and just kind of one step down at a time until.
Yeah, this was more of a wow, my sister could have died moment, and then that spiraled into this depression. So it can be, you don't really know what your trigger might be. But yeah, there typically is like something that sparks it, you know, and so maybe, you know, just noticing or keeping in mind that, oh, maybe because this happened, you know, what's going on in this person's life that could have triggered this might help make sense of, you know, how you approach somebody and how you talk to them about what they're going through. You know, so you can kind of, that's a way to like understand their perspective and try to, you know, be more empathetic rather than judgmental. Why could somebody be feeling this way?
Kind of enter into their reality.
Yeah.
Their world.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, just kind of a sense of helplessness and hopelessness as well. On the part of both the patient as well as the loved ones.
Yeah, how much did it affect her daughter?
Oh, wow.
It's a lot, yeah.
They were pretty close.
And what gets me every time is when she's like, you gotta just keep encouraging them and you know, just kind of being there with them and just keep encouraging them. And that shows so much strength for, I mean, it takes so much to keep showing that compassion to someone, you know, not saying just snap out of it. That's easy to say that. But to, you know, wow, I'm really concerned about you. You want to, you know, that dramatization, just like, you want to, you know, go out to whatever, I don't really know what she was saying, but like inviting her out and, you know, having someone say, no, I just don't want to do anything. And you just feel so helpless. But that's just part of the process. It's not a quick fix. It's, you know, it's, yeah, you have to be just super patient, which is, so, you know, it's so hard. Yeah, that's what stands out to me.
Sometimes even something like retiring, someone that has been focused on their profession for their whole life.
Sure.
And then they retire and all of a sudden they have an identity, you know, lapse. Just like, who am I now?
Sure, yeah. When some people might say that, like, wow, congratulations, you must be so happy, you've got so much free time. And if you put that on someone else, that might make them feel, and if they're like struggling with that, that might not be a good reaction for that person. Yeah.
That's kind of the similar reaction when I was working with the homeless. We were trying to get them housed, and once we did, you know, our reaction was like, oh my gosh, you're housed, like how exciting, you've been on the streets for like 20 years. And they end up like either not living in the house, they lost their identity of being homeless, you know, things like that. So they don't, it's not always like a good thing what we perceive as a good thing.
Yeah, I think that is, I mean, and that is like, that's key. That's so huge. that's something that I've learned just with mental health first aid, is that when we're going to get to this too, when we, one of the E, or actually both of the E's, are encouraging self-help strategies and encouraging professional help, and all this encouraging, you know, our tendency, I think human nature, like we tend to like want to help people, like, oh, you should do this, you should do that, oh man, like, you know, you want to help them, but what we perceive as, you know, what would help them, it might not be really what would be helpful for them. So I think, yeah, thank you for sharing that. That's huge. All right, so we're gonna kind of skip over this. We really talked about a lot of these. So these are physical signs and symptoms of depression, which we didn't. There's like so many videos we can watch. We just don't have time for them. One of them is this guy John, and he basically talks about how he discovered he had depression was through physical symptoms. So he went to his primary caregiver, and that person was then trained, you know, you don't have really, you know, nothing's really going on, you just have a lot of headaches, or, you know, it's just all these physical things. And then that doctor was trained to ask more about the mental health side of things, and they discovered that he had depression. So sometimes it can come out, you first notice the physical symptoms. These are behavioral stuff. There we go. Then we kind of, yeah. We typically think of these when we think of depression. And then
the decisive one, I wasn't on there, but
oh,
that's sometimes when you can't have clarity to make decisions.
Yeah, that's true.
That can become depressing after a while,
yeah,
and that happens with brain trauma.
Mm-hmm.
So,
like you don't really know what to do or how to move forward.
Yeah, some brain traumas affect decision making basically. Sure. And so that can kind of get you to a sense of powerlessness, and then that physical develops into the mental.
Yeah.
Too, so.
Right. Like, come on, you got to do something to like get out of this.
Well, right, and just like you were just saying, with people having expectations of you and not meeting them, and that's, you know, that's demoralizing in itself if you're mentally healthy and all that. So
that's gonna make you feel even worse about how you're feeling.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. It's really hard. And then some of the psychological symptoms. So we mentioned these as well. Oh, here that is.
Oh, there it is.
Under psychological. And we're going to talk about how to approach someone who we believe might have suicidal thoughts.
Sorry to interrupt, but there's one more thing. People who are empathetic and don't know it, like they can sense other people's feelings, and you know, they may feel these things and not realize that it's not their energy, it's somebody else's, and so that can kind of be a factor or playing into this, where it's people around the depression that are being affected too.
For sure, yeah. I'm sure Andrea, if she hasn't talked about it already, but she will talk about that secondhand, or just what is it?
Vicarious trauma.
Vicarious trauma, thank you. Like, what? Secondhand? What am I saying? Vicarious trauma, yeah, exactly. But I think that's kind of tying into what you're saying is, you know, sometimes we're so empathetic or we just feel for somebody else that it can start to affect our life as well. And so that's definitely something to be mindful of, you know, and making sure that you're checking on your mental health. You're, you know, are you taking care of yourself? And you have to take care of yourself first before you can take care of anyone else. So that's definitely something to just, check yourself on. All right, so kind of shifting gears to anxiety, how it's different than depression, but also just different than feeling anxious. This is, you know, if you're diagnosed with anxiety, this is an ongoing experience, and it's more severe, and it's going to impact your life. So there's all different kinds of anxiety. The most prevalent is having a specific phobia. So what are some of those that you guys are familiar with? Arachnophobia, yep, fear of spiders.
Agoraphobia.
Agoraphobia. I think of claustrophobia.
Trump phobia.
Yeah, and even though that's the most common, it's actually the least, arguably the least impactful because those can be avoided. So if you know what you're afraid of, or you know what specific phobia you have, you can most likely avoid it. And then there's social anxiety disorder. That's basically you get really anxious around people, and you maybe don't want to, you don't want to interact with anybody, or you don't want to. It keeps you from engaging in conversations. Does anyone know? Does anyone know anyone with anxiety disorder? Or how would you define it? How would you describe it?
It can just be a really quick and unexpected onslaught of like a random thought that becomes really distressing, and then you'll see it manifest physically a lot of times. Whole body will shake, hands and feet will go cold, heart racing, difficulty breathing, nausea. But yeah, that one will get triggered just by an errant thought that crosses the mind, and it can be something that's, I think it's really normal for people to have certain types of thoughts without it being something that's overly concerning. But once you cross into that realm of self-judgment, why would I think that? And then it just all comes crashing down. It spirals out really fast.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think what's interesting about depression and anxiety is that I think people can relate on some level to those feelings, and then just imagining it being amplified even more and just kind of out of control, and you really can't handle it. Yeah.
I was just gonna say, like, when I had anxiety, I would actually, I could feel it coming on, but and eventually I learned how to like stop it when I could tell it was coming on. But for a few years, like I couldn't at all, and eventually, I would feel like myself was choking myself, like my own throat. I was like at the doctor, like, look down there.
There's something.
My own throat's choking me. They're like, no, it's just anxiety. I'm like, well, yeah, I know that, but really, like, yeah. And it really, like, I could breathe up until like a point, but it really felt like my throat was like closing in on me. It was crazy.
Yeah, and tomorrow we're going to talk about panic attacks.
That's what it, I mean, they were, yeah.
Yeah, which is interesting how the layout of the training is. Like, it's interesting that, because panic attacks do come up with anxiety, but then it's separate from, it's like in a different section. So, but yeah, we're going to talk about that too. So yeah, and panic disorder, almost 3% of adults experience that in a given year. PTSD is up there. I don't know, is anyone surprised by these numbers?
I'm surprised the total is the same as your last chart.
Yeah, that's kind of fun. Yeah. Yeah, I don't know. It's interesting, yeah.
I think
1 in 5.
Low. Maybe it's more.
Yeah, it could be more.
Because not everyone reports.
Yeah.
Or seeks help.
This is one that you can see in the little ones too. The kids will more frequently have anxiety attacks.
Yeah.
I feel like a lot of people too would overlook anxiety as just worry. I mean, if it's generalized anxiety, they're thinking more of like panic attacks or anxiety, and there's I'm just worried.
Right. Well, that's what could make this so hard to diagnose. Is there are people who worry. There is excessive worry, and then there is having an anxiety disorder. So that's tough. Yeah.
This is what's kind of confusing, the post-traumatic, because my understanding was like depression is you're living in the past kind of thing, and anxiety is all worry about the future. And so it's interesting that post-traumatic would be an anxiety disorder. Seems like more of a depressive state to me personally, but I'm not a professional.
Right, like how they categorize it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know.
Might not fit into either.
I've experienced PTSD personally after one of my friends shot and killed himself in his bathtub, and I happened to be the person who found him. After that, the difference, and I've had depression for years and years, the difference between those is night and day. The PTSD is like a legit debilitating trigger where your body just seizes. It's not even a depressed feeling, it's like a complete disassociation, panic, can't get out of your own head. It's awful. It's way different. I can see why they would put it with anxiety for sure.
Yeah. So with this, so maybe the signs and symptoms of PTSD is more similar to anxiety than depression. Yeah. Cool, thanks.
Yeah, that's it. Like that's why I had the anxiety, was because of the PTSD. And it was like once I started getting treatment for that, those major symptoms were getting better, but then I was still, having panic attacks and anxiety, and things got better, but there was still all that after that.
Yeah. Yeah. And then the agoraphobia, that's having an anxiety disorder without the panic as part of it. So there's all different kinds. And this is just to give you guys an understanding of what these disorders look like. But again, we're not diagnosing anybody or trying to figure anyone else out. Just to understand there's all these different ways that this mental illness can affect people. All right, so, this is describing what this is showing what Dara was describing. This was actually drawn by somebody with anxiety to just kind of show what it feels like. Any reactions to this? It's a good visual.
It's interesting that neurologist, psychiatrist is sort of considered to be the father of the definition of stress. Hans Selye said from the very beginning, that stress is the non-specific response of the body to any demand placed on it, which is interesting because it means it's completely different based upon the person. It's not specific. So you look at that and you go, it's like it can be any of all of these things, quite frankly.
Right.
And it very much affects the midbrain, big time midbrain, bypassing frontal cortex, so even rational information is irrelevant because the information is bypassing that, going right to midbrain, stimulates the brainstem, and you're off and running to all of these then.
Sure,
yeah.
All right, and then some physical signs. So these are the signs that we might see, notice. Somebody, we mentioned, fast breathing, shortness of breath, also like in the, neurological signs, dizziness, headaches, sweating. If you were to notice somebody experiencing one or more of these signs, what could that also look like?
Heart attack.
Yeah.
They just had a Red Bull.
So, so it could look like a heart attack too. So that's just something to keep in mind. And behaviors. Just similar to like what Dara was saying, mind racing, confusion, restlessness, nerves, fatigue, also sleep disturbance. Next slide, just some risk factors for developing depression and or anxiety. We kind of talked about these a little bit, but distressing event or traumatic event, a difficult childhood, what that means specifically. It's kind of, there's no specifics on that, but possibly like some abuse or neglect, or history of childhood anxiety, ongoing stress. So these are risk factors. If you know somebody, who maybe something's going on, that's just a mental note to keep in mind, like when you're approaching somebody. This one's always interesting, just more sensitive, emotional nature. I think it kind of just goes back to, just depends on the person. You just never know.
Or like you said, if someone tells you that you're depressed, kind of labeling it.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know why that just came back up.
Mm-hmm. Or just like minimizing it. Oh, you're just emotional. If someone is known to be more sensitive, that might be somebody dismissing what's a serious thing going on. So other risk factors.
Recent or premature, is that what that means?
Recent childbirth?
Oh, is a risk factor, okay.
Yes, so that's a risk factor, so that's that.
Because I know if you stress out a lot during your pregnancy, you'll go into labor early, potentially.
Yeah. Actually, there was a note here too that said that that prepartum depression can occur during pregnancy. So all kinds of things may happen. But we didn't talk about seasonal depression, but basically, if you are sensitive to that chemical imbalance, so what is it? I guess just like vitamin D, deficiency.
Serotonin.
Serotonin, right? Yeah. So
that's actually an opportunity for like working on your depression. If you're in an area with not that much sunlight, it could be because of that, So
right, yeah.
Something to consider. If it's maybe minimizing seasonal depression, but there's kind of something you could do.
Right, yeah.
Doesn't like Seattle have like one of the highest rates of depression and suicide?
Right.
It's always raining.
Yeah.
And here there's 300 days of sun a year, so
very different.
kind of a draw.
Yeah. All right. So, does anyone want to take a 5-minute break?
Sure.
Yeah. Let's take a 5-minute break. Talk about the first one, which is, I don't know if you guys can see it, but it's purple. So that's what we're talking about next. Assess for risk of suicide or harm. So what to look out for, most common crises are suicidal thoughts and behaviors and non-suicidal self-injury. So actually what we're going to do right now is I'm going to pass out the sheet that says helpful things to say. So what you're going to do is you're going to read through this and you're going to circle the ones that, let's see, actually what we're going to do. Why don't you, circle the ones that you really like and X the ones that are just bad, that you don't ever want. Absolute worst one, do you think?
Maybe some of them.
Yeah,
what's that?
Must be 10 of them at least.
How about that? You've just got to face up to reality. Life is not a bed of roses.
How about if I were you, I'd be feeling like there was no point in living too.
Yeah.
That's a pretty bad one.
That's a bad one.
I also didn't like the pianist.
Yeah.
Or just having a bad hair day.
Yeah. Very minimal. Going back to the if I were you, I'd be feeling like there was no point in living too. That one is really hard for me because I just know there are so many websites that have that kind of language on it, and really encouraging people to take their lives. And it's just really awful that people say that kind of stuff and they joke around about suicide, and people really do, who are in a vulnerable mental state, can read that or hear that, and that's kind of like a tipping point. So it's definitely, that's a really bad one. Yeah. Anyone that you were like, oh, that sounds like it could be helpful, but maybe depending on the situation, I'm not sure.
19 for me.
Yeah.
I have to stop and talk, but I've got to go. I'll give you a call later.
Yeah. What do you think about that?
I don't know, like I can see like being busy or having something you have to do,
Yeah.
or like somewhere that you have to go, or something else that needs your immediate attention, like kids or something like that. Like you have to go pick up your kids and it's like now's not a good time, but I'll call you later, like let's talk about this. So I was like, oh.
Like when you can give your full attention.
Yeah, like I can see how that would be like, I don't have time for this right now, but I can also see where it's like, I don't want to dismiss this either.
Right. I want to acknowledge that I'm seeing something is wrong, but I also have, something that needs my immediate attention. So it's definitely, maybe you wouldn't say it exactly like that, depending on your personality. But the idea, I think, is a good idea, is that we're not always in the state of mind that we could really listen to somebody. If we're thinking about something else, we really can't give someone our full attention. So that isn't the best time to talk with somebody, because that's going to show in our gestures, and and if we're like, okay, yeah, I'm listening, but I don't know who wears watches anymore, but no, sorry.
Some are circumstantial, like number 23, for instance, would suggest that you have been listening to the person. And if the feelings that you're describing have been present for a long time, I think it's important that you see your family physician, which I could see saying that at the same time you're sort of cutting the person off potentially. And the first thing, well, just go to the doctor, he'll give you something, or she'll give you something, So, but I can see where that's something you might consider if the person's got a primary care doctor.
Yeah.
That is, so.
Right.
Yeah, I kind of have a problem with that one a little bit. Like, I like it, but I think it should say see your family physician or like some sort of professional, because someone might not have a primary care, or they might not feel comfortable going to primary care about some sort of mental or emotional issue. I just think that one should be elaborated a little more.
Sure, more like an open suggestion, like, have you thought about seeing someone professional? Do you have anyone in mind? Have you seen anyone before? Yeah, have you thought about seeing somebody? But yeah, definitely they're saying, if this sounds like it's really bad, and if it's been going on for a long time, which maybe that's what it sounds like, then it's really important that you, that I'm really concerned about you, and so maybe we should think about next steps. That idea is really good. Yeah. Good. Is there anyone that you really liked?
Let's go and have a cup of tea.
Yeah. Nice. Yeah.
That's what we do.
And what's good about that one?
Well, actually, it's doing something. Because
Yeah.
part of the things is to move forwards. So it's soothing and it's nice and it's something, it's doing. Like moving out of lying on the couch or whatever. And your brain goes, oh, what kind of tea do I want?
Yeah. You're going somewhere else, change of environment. It's something just very casual, and
You don't have to talk about your problems.
Right.
Just have a cup of tea.
Exactly. It's just company. Yeah.
It's like self-care then.
Yeah. It's good. Nice.
I like number 16.
Yeah.
It's hard to
I like that one too.
understand what exactly you're going through, which kind of like, I wanted to say this before, like number 1 and 2, especially like number 1, like I understand and I know exactly what you're going through. It happened to me. Like, I can't stand it when people are like, oh, I understand. Or they're like, I know what you mean. It's like, you should say like, I can imagine, maybe. But like, even if the two of us have the exact same experience, like if we both just, whatever happened right now, we would still have a different experience of that exact same experience. So she couldn't even say, I know exactly, you know what I mean? Really, she might, but like, I don't know, it just drives me nuts when people say that.
I feel like it takes away the uniqueness of like, the individual.
It invalidates their experience, for sure.
The focus on the other.
Really?
Right.
My dog died before that. Did yours? You know.
Cool
story.
It sets up comparison, but it also, like you said, takes away the focus is on that person. And when you share, oh, I know what you're going through, I know exactly, then you're bringing it back to you, and it's not about you, it's about them. So that is one way that people want to connect, but sometimes it's not the most helpful. And if any of you are on the helpline after you finish CIT, that's definitely something I never say is I know exactly what you're going through or anything like that. Wow, that sounds like you're going through something that's really difficult. You know, just trying to always have it be from there, you know, I'm trying to understand what you're going through. Tell me what it is. And trying giving them some words and showing that I'm listening and can kind of relate, but I'm not saying that I've experienced that or that I know anyone else that has experienced it.
Sometimes I've said like, oh, I've felt some of those feelings before,
sure.
and that's saying the same thing, but in, you know, not trying to take over the feeling for yourself. But some of these, from my personal perspective, I would almost prefer someone do something like having a bad hair day or say something that makes me laugh, or, you know, that doesn't start to just dwell in the problem. Kind of like going for the cup of tea is making that shift away from being constantly in your thoughts. So
sometimes a distraction is what you need. Yeah, something different. Yeah. Humor.
Exactly. Laughter is good.
Because there's so many different parts of us, and having a mental illness is just one piece. There's so many other things that you could talk to somebody about. So focusing on that one thing, you know, is not always what that person wants in that moment. So I think that's a really good point. And sometimes, humor and distraction. Talk about anything else, and that just might be enough for that day. All right, awesome. I love that you guys are participating and talking. It's good. So let's see. The next thing. What is the next thing? So we're talking about suicide risk and assessing for that. What do you think are some of the, I guess, risk factors? Do you guys know any risk factors? Who's at higher risk of completing suicide? Men, yeah. The video said men are, because they use more lethal means. Yep. However, women attempt suicide 3 times the rate of men. So let's see. So gender is on here. Age. Yep.
Can I go back to that?
Yeah.
With the attempting, do males and females approach it differently, like how they're going to? Because, you know, if you're going to be suicide, then women fail at it and men are good at it. But is it their choice of how to die?
Yeah.
Statistically, women try and complete suicide with medication and overdoses. Men are way more likely to complete suicide with violent measures. Guns, knives,
But not guns.
So that's just,
a really common one too is jumping off a cliff.
Yeah.
Making it look like a car accident, you know.
And that you're taking a risk, like sometimes that will kill you and sometimes it might not, I guess. Well, I guess depending on where. But yeah. Age is also a factor. Teenagers, I think it's one of the leading causes of death. I think it's the second. Yeah.
I think for men now under age, I believe it just.
Oh, yeah.
I think it was
Oh, that's
reported, like in
good.
the last month
Yeah.
or two is like the leading cause.
Oh, is it the leading cause? Yeah.
Suicide.
No, used to be third for
Right.
teenagers, and then it bumped up to number 2. So maybe for young men, it could be number 1. Yeah, So it's becoming a real problem. Having a chronic physical illness is a risk factor. Having a mental illness is a risk factor. Using alcohol or drugs. And so that could be just a coping mechanism for dealing with, for coping with a mental illness. Not having social support, a previous attempt, and an organized plan. So the 2 most important risk factors are the last 2. If they've attempted before, that's a huge red flag, just like, okay, this person has done this before, so there's some serious risk there. And if they have an organized plan, that's also just a higher risk because they've thought about how they're going to do it. It doesn't mean that someone without a plan is, okay, good, so you don't have a plan, all right, we're done here. It's, it's just that less of a risk. How you respond just changes a little bit, and who you get involved might change.
You might be covering this, but if someone says they're, have you attempted this before? Is that appropriate?
Yes.
Okay.
Definitely. Yeah. So let's see. Oh, less social support. Evidence shows that not having a spouse is a risk factor for males. I think I read too that middle-aged men who have recently gone through divorce are at high risk of suicidal thoughts. So just that lack of social support. And I think, I don't know, maybe it has to do with how we raise men and women differently, and just how men stereotypically are less likely to have those close relationships. I don't know, does that something that yeah.
I read something on that recently, and it's females will go and talk to their girlfriends and talk through their problems. It's how you solve, and males will not. So it's so when they get divorced, they don't have that network. They had the one that the wife had,
right?
And then
but they have their wife.
Yeah. And then they're on their own. Whereas women will have that, when people leave on divorce, women have planned it all the way through, and men just don't. So it's that social network.
This is just a generalization, but I think that women may deal with failure better than men.
As you said, they don't have their wife anymore. Sometimes men do a bit of emotional dumping on their wives, and so that's now being put back onto them, and can be overwhelming. I have some friends who are going through that where they just go to drinking all the time to deal and escape from the divorce emotions that just come from having a divorce, not to mention all the emotional support they had before.
Did you guys see Tough Guys yet?
Yeah.
So that kind of just reminds me of Tough Guys, and just how we've feminized just our emotions. When it's just everyone has all the emotions, so why is it more acceptable for women to show all the emotions? So it's interesting. Let's see. So warning signs. So it's kind of different than risk factors. Those are risk factors are just elements in someone's life that could make them more likely to have suicidal thoughts. And then warning signs, something you would see. So it would be something that maybe you're already familiar with, some warning signs that someone's thinking about taking their life. Yeah.
Giving away possessions.
Yeah. That's a huge one. Why is that important?
think that they're giving you some sort of memento to ease the pain once they go, or they're trying to ease the burden after they die, getting the affairs in order and dealing with getting this given to so-and-so and all that, so there's no fighting afterward or whatever.
Right. Yeah, so in some way it's easing this transition. Also, like, this thing, I want you to take care of it. It's, you know, passing this whatever it is on to someone else. Yeah. So that's a big warning sign. Any other ones you guys know about?
Risky behavior.
Sorry. Yeah, no.
Risky behavior? Sure, yeah. What might that say about someone's mental state?
They just don't care.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter anymore.
Right. Exactly. Where is it?
Talking about suicide.
Yes.
Or death in general.
Why is that important to know? That talking about suicide might be a warning sign?
Because if they're talking about it, that means they've been significantly thinking about it. And they might be, concocting a plan, already have one.
Yeah. What's interesting is people do talk about it, and then people just think that's like, well, they're so open about it, like they're not serious. They're not actually seriously considering, committing suicide. But the opposite is true. If you're talking about it, you're thinking about it, and
Well, I think it was a myth that was perpetrated, I remember from the 60s. Well, if you're talking about it, they're not going to do it. I mean,
right.
Well,
it's just
right.
a-
And even now, especially with social media and the kids, they just want attention. She just wants attention. Someone wants to feel bad for her. So
Yeah, they need attention. So give it to them.
Yeah, they get negative attention or go for negative when they don't get positive.
Yeah.
I think also, like, sometimes people do use suicide as a means to try and control another person. Not always, obviously. But if you've had experience with someone, like an ex-girlfriend or boyfriend, who uses that over your head every time you try and break up with them, then chances are next time you hear someone talk about it, even if it is a close friend, you might just have a bias, whether you recognize it or not.
Yeah, if you break up with me, I'm gonna kill myself.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. And that's putting it on the other person.
Right.
And it's definitely a way to control somebody. Yeah. So let's see. Yeah, that's the number one right there. Just even talking about it. Seeking the means. So if they're getting a gun or getting a knife or whatever it might be. Talking about it again. Other signs that you might not notice right away is just feeling hopeless or worthless. Having a lack of purpose. And that you might not know until you talk to somebody. You hear what they have to say.
That also come in, so say you have some mental health issues and you've seen the experts and no one can help you. It's like, I've been to everyone and I still there's no change, so I'll just take care of it.
Sure.
So it's like, try.
Right, so it's internalizing that I'm a burden to my loved ones. It would just be way easier if I wasn't around. Yeah. Unfortunately, that can be the mindset of somebody. If you notice somebody is increasing they're drinking more, using more, withdrawn. We don't have giving away possession line research. Maybe it has to do with what people have disclosed. Anyway, I know it is one. But having a dramatic change in mood. So if somebody has been feeling, maybe someone shows like they are, withdrawn from family and friends, and they seem, hopeless and just just kind of down and just not engaged in things. And then all of a sudden they're super happy about things, everything's going well. You might think, all right, so I guess there's nothing to worry about anymore. They seem like they've taken care of whatever it is that was going on. But that is also a warning sign. Why do you think that's a warning sign?
Because they've made peace with their decision.
Their pain's gonna
They've
end.
got a plan.
Yeah. the pain's gonna end. Right, exactly.
Is there a name for that?
That switch?
Yeah.
I don't know. Yeah. Right, just that they've made the decision, and so they're feeling, I think, at peace or.
Do people who commit suicide think that they're solving the problems for their family? You know, it's like it's going to be so much better without me. So.
All I know is that, from what I know, is that people just want to end the pain.
Mm-hmm.
So it could be that if they think that they're causing their family pain, that they're going to end that. I don't know. Does anyone have any thoughts on that?
I just know someone who committed suicide luckily and had a family. You know, it's like people are like, how do you do that? Well, I don't know. I don't know what he was thinking, but and I knew he had mental health problems and they were never solved.
I feel like that also comes with like a lack of purpose, or like there's a bunch of stuff financial if they can't support their family and things like that, where they just feel like, well, if I die, maybe my life insurance at least or something like that.
That reminds me of, I think, what you said earlier when we were talking about the terms associated with mental illness, and like someone, I think, like, oh, you have so many other things going for you.
Oh yeah, what do you have to be depressed about?
Yeah, what do you have to be depressed about? Yeah, and so if somebody is like thinking about suicide and they disclose that to you, you know, a very unhelpful thing to say would be like, yeah, but you have a family. You know, and it's like, even though we might think like rationally, like, well, why would you want to do that? Because you have people that care about you and love you. But that's not helpful to that person because they're thinking completely differently about their family. So, yeah.
Well, often they'll even think, well, you know, it makes it even worse because what the hell's wrong with me? I mean, you're already thinking about it. It's like, here's confirmation. You've got everything going for you, nice family, everything else, and I'm really effed up.
Yeah. Let's see. So, we're going to move into kind of what you're talking about, like how to have that conversation with somebody. So, asking directly. It is very important to ask directly. If you seriously believe somebody is thinking of suicide, it's not helpful for you or for them to say something like, "Are you thinking of hurting yourself?" Because it might not be accurate. If they say no, it could be that they're not thinking of what they're going to do is going to hurt them. They're thinking it's going to, in fact, end the pain. So being direct, you know, are you having thoughts of suicide? That you're going to get the answer that's truthful. If they say no, that's, you know, in that moment, I guess that, you know, it's good. They're not having thoughts of suicide. At the same time, I would stress that you ask twice if you're really concerned. People have said that to me. I know it's not like in our manuals or anything, but to ask twice because it really makes a lot of sense, especially if somebody is hesitant to talk about it. Maybe you're the first person that's asked them and they don't want to make it a big deal or they don't know how you're going to react. Especially if they don't know how you're going to react. If you ask, you know, again, you know, you said no, but, you know, I've seen this, you know, you're acting differently and I'm really concerned about you. Please let me know if you are feeling this way. I would totally understand. I'm here for you. And if anything changes, I mean, if somebody is not suicidal, they're gonna be like, no, I'm not there. Thank you though. You know, no one's gonna get mad at you for asking and caring about them. So it's better to ask and be direct than to not ask and not know. So if it's a maybe, you also want to take it as a yes. Because there could just be, again, like not sure if they can trust you or they're not sure how you're gonna react. So just examples. And if yes to either, then it's really important to ask, just to assess the risk. You know, how immediate do I need to sit with this person and be with them? What are the resources I need to get? You know, do they have a plan? And some details of that plan. So, one person that I took the training from, he said to also ask if they have another plan too, because if there's more than one plan, again, that just kind of raises the risk that they're really thinking about it. Well, I don't know, I might do this, and also you can think about whether they have the means or not, if they have a different plan or things like that. So it's just good to ask those questions, even though they're hard and it's uncomfortable. If you're comfortable asking those questions, then the person who's, experiencing that, who's having those thoughts, then they're going to be more likely to be honest with you.
Truly, they're coming to you for help in some way. So, you be more responsive and helping them.
Right.
Knowing what you're talking about, I guess.
Right. Yeah. Right. You can help someone better if you know more about what they're going through. Yeah. And you can also, depending on the situation, the more you know, the more, if you get say you do take them to the hospital to get them assessed, you can be there to explain to, the doctors what's going on, what they've told you and everything, so that they don't have to, if they don't want to, talk more about it. So just being that calm support person can be helpful in that kind of situation. So these are what you do want to do. You don't want to ask the question with dread. You're not, or expressing negative judgment. So you're not going to do anything stupid, like kill yourself, right? Those facial expressions, like, oh my God. People are not going to be honest with you if you're showing that you're uncomfortable with asking that question, or if you have any negative judgments around it.
You said take them to the hospital.
Yeah.
That you're supposed to do. Take them
Well, I guess so. It depends on I guess it really depends on your role. So it depends on where you are and who that person is to you. So you might just call. You might. I don't know. I guess depending on what that person wants to do. I immediately think of going to the hospital just because if someone is suicidal, I know that they can hold you there 24. I think it's 24 hours or 48 hours. 48. Yeah, it's a 48-hour hold, and you talk with a professional about next steps and a safety plan and all that, and personally. I wouldn't feel comfortable leaving someone alone, and I don't know if I would have the resources or the time or just the ability to be with that person for 48 hours. So I guess the hospital for me is my go-to.
Does health insurance cover that cost?
No, it's a normal emergency room visit.
Oh.
And then it'll get billed, when my friend killed himself, his wife was with me. She started talking about all sorts of suicidal stuff. So when I had the ambulance come out to recover the body and take her in, I asked them to put her in the hospital. And then while we were in the emergency room, they asked if I thought she was okay, and I said no. So I had her sent to the mental hospital in Reno, and she got billed real high. Yep.
Another thing too is just depending on your relationship with that person, I know professionals do this too, but just making a contract or a verbal agreement, just don't kill yourself tonight. I'm gonna check in with you, tomorrow at this time, and and then we're gonna just take it one day at a time type of thing. So I guess it's your own judgment, depending on how you feel. If you feel like they can keep themselves safe for that night, you don't have to call the police, I'd say. But, again, it depends on the situation and how comfortable you feel with the choice. So,
Can someone seem okay and then something triggers them a few hours later?
Right. I guess that's the risk. Yeah. So.
The unfortunate thing about the situation is that you have no control over what somebody does to themselves or other people. that person themselves too. You can only offer yourself as a support and somebody that knows resources and protocols and things that happen to let that person know that there is help. And if they still think there's no help, you know, calling emergency help to get them help.
And there are like full day trainings on just suicide. So I know there's QPR and Assist. There's like multiple programs if you guys are really interested about like, you know, more detailed approach to, you know, how do you intervene when somebody says that they're suicidal. You can look those up as well. And maybe that would be something to, like a resource to give out or something, I don't know.
Yeah, I can look it up for you guys if you're interested. Or anybody.
It's just a good reminder also, those people at the end of the day are always going to do what they want.
Yeah.
So you can go through all the steps we tell you.
Right.
And at the end of the day, it is not your hand that stops them.
Which is tough too, because I know a lot of people, you know, I've heard a lot of people will blame themselves. Oh, I should have seen that. I should have known. And, you know, it's really important to not blame yourself because it really is out of your control. So we can do the best we can, but with education and looking for, talking about warning signs and all that, and yeah, taking all these steps, but right, like in the end, if you've done all you can do, which is, you know, what most people do, and which is what they know how to do in that moment, that's really all you can do.
Remind them it's against the law.
Yeah.
I don't know.
I mean, it's just.
I mean, you're talking about law enforcement or the hospital.
Yeah.
So
So
if you look at it from your point of view, and they're talking about, you know, community crime as insensitive as it sounds, you would do it differently.
So I guess I would say that that kind of expresses somewhat of a negative judgment, only because that might not persuade someone, because you know it's against the law. People do things that are against the law all the time. It doesn't really.
If they feel like it's going to end their pain, they're not going to care.
Well, and if they're dead, they're not around to be prosecuted for it, so they're just gonna make sure they do it thoroughly.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, I've known people who've kind of gone like the guilt trip route, and they've kind of like shut the person off, like, you know, I'm kind of done with your stupid decisions, you're being reckless. You know, they have all these signs. The suicidal people have nothing to live for, so they spend money, they're doing stupid things, they're taking risks they shouldn't. That guilt factor is usually when this person or a friend is like given up and they have no idea what else to do. But at the end of the day, yeah, a suicidal person doesn't actually reap any of the consequences because they're not around to see it. So.
And you might think that, like in our rational brain, okay, it's against the law, or like you're gonna leave your family behind. It's like all these things, but like kind of what we've been talking about, it doesn't really matter how we perceive the situation. You know, it's really about supporting that person, how we help them, and really overall, yeah, like a guilt trip, anything like that, that's really not going to get at the heart of what that person's going through. So I think, thank you, I'm glad that you brought that up, because that can be really...
Yeah, it was more food for thought than my opinion.
It's
about accountability for actions too, and you know, maybe earlier on in the process, kind of discussing that perspective a little bit.
Sure, yeah.
I think it also really points out, and Audrey and Catherine pretty much end of every class say maybe the most important thing, which is self-care. And that's what you see with physicians and nurses, a lot of mental health professionals. Frankly, having worked for a big HMO at one point in my career, the people we least like to insure are those three groups of people because their incident rates of morbidity and chronic illnesses and disease and suicide and everything else. And so really it's the most important thing they say is you have to take care of yourself. At the end of the day, you can't control someone else's behavior, but you really need to take care of yourself. And that's hard to do because what I've noticed is that the stress in the healing professions is so high because everything's required to maintain licensure, to maintain HIPAA, outcomes, yada, 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 and as well as have relationships with family and everything, the stress is sky high. And so we have a lot of unhealed healers, which isn't good.
Right. And then two other things just to keep in mind: if the person's been using drugs or alcohol, that might, just kind of just make it more high risk. And then again, if they've attempted in the past. So, oh man. So we want to keep the person safe. Number one. Helping the person identify past supports. This is really helpful for you because you don't want to be the only person that knows that they're thinking of suicide. That kind of going back to what you were saying, it's just a lot of stress on one person if you're the only person that knows or is supporting them, right? That's a lot to just be that person's full support. So I'm skipping to the bottom because here it says, do not agree to keep their plan a secret. A lot of times when someone asks you, oh, can you keep a secret? Our first reaction is be like, yeah, what is it? Yeah, I can do that. But in this case, it depends on what you tell me, and really, you shouldn't keep this kind of secret. I've done this training for people who work with teens, and that's a lot of times teens will be like, well, I don't want you to tell anybody, and you feel like that might break your trust with that, break the friendship or break that relationship. So you don't want to break that relationship, but really it's better to not keep that secret because you're going to save that person's life. So basically, don't worry about breaking a promise. If you do say, yeah, I'm not going to tell anybody, and then you do, don't beat yourself up over that. That's a good thing. So, let's see. Yeah, and then you don't want to leave someone alone, kind of what we talked about. We don't want to use guilt or threats to try to prevent it. People have that religious, some maybe religious belief like you'll go to hell or whatever. That's just not going to be helpful in that situation. So we're moving on to self-injury. So non-suicidal self-injury. That of itself is not a mental illness, but it's a very common symptom of mental illness. And the reasons for self-injury is not always, it's to harm yourself or it's to, I guess, it's like release pain, release pressure, but it's not the intent is not to kill yourself. So people who are feeling distressed will engage in self-harm, but the intent is not to kill themselves. So there's misconceptions about that. So here are some of the reasons why people have said that they have self-harmed. And really this just, is a slide that's really about empathy and understanding why someone would hurt themselves. I think that, if you immediately jump to why would you do that to yourself? You're hurting yourself. Like, don't do that. That's not helpful. So really understanding why, getting in their shoes, understanding why someone might engage in this behavior. This is their way of coping with whatever's going on with them.
Well, let me ask you, just like the first one there, as well as the second from the bottom, is that the person that's injuring themselves, that they can focus on the physical injury and somehow it's going to take them away from their thought process that they're projecting or whatever? It's like,
sure, yeah. So just like in the moment, well, from what I've learned is it's like being in control sometimes, is that you have control over something. I think there's a lot of different reasons. I'm not sure, but that could be one is just focusing on what's happening right now, or
like a distraction.
people, distraction, right.
Were you trying to figure out like more why it happens so consistently?
Yeah, well, you just hear that cutting is fairly prevalent, so I was just curious, like, in this case, the escape from terrible anguish is that, well, at least I have enough control that I can cut myself, you know, I mean, it's hard for me, it'd be hard for me to think that's not a form of mental illness.
Well, I think it happens like a lot in high schools and like middle school, and it's usually some form, like often those kids are bullied, they're not in a support group at school. They're usually acting out in an environment at home where they're not getting the attention or right attention. And so it's something that they're doing to try and heal pain, but pain that is in their control. So usually that they have other pain coming from different areas, and that's why. So it could be like, pulling out hair. Cutting is just, now cutting is like one of tons of ways people do it. So it's like they get more creative and creative as parents are noticing cutting a lot quicker than if you pull out your hair consistently. So.
Yeah. And even just, I guess self-injury could be just like, just taking a lot of drugs too, or like kind of just if you're blacking out a lot or something, like you're just drinking heavily, that could be like engaging in self-harm just because you just want to escape a situation. So this slide, I really like this slide just because it just is kind of really kind of to the point how you help somebody. Just recognizing that it's a symptom of serious psychological distress. So like what Catherine was saying, they could be experiencing, a terrible home life or, bullying at school. We really don't know what's going on maybe right away, but self-injury is really, I guess I think of it as like a negative coping mechanism or coping skill. But in a way, it can be a good thing. So what I mean by that is this is a way of somebody is coping with their stress. And so rather than focusing on stopping the self-injury, you want to figure out, what's causing them to self-harm in the first place. Instead of saying like, well, you just shouldn't do that. It's because that's their way of coping. So we, just trying to find different ways of coping with it. So, kind of just going back to that, you don't want to show any negative judgments around the behavior. It's just you're wanting to be accepting so that they're still open to talking to you about what's going on with them. If you are focusing on stopping the self-injury, you're making threats, you're kind of showing you're just judgmental about what they're doing, they're probably going to not tell you about it, keep it from you, and then they're not going to get help. So it's better to just be open and just understanding, kind of going back to that slide, understanding why someone might engage in self-harm and try to help them move to a different coping skill.
My kid did cutting, and interesting that you said, because the teacher called me and then I Googled it. I'm like, what is this all about? I'm like, oh, it's overwhelm. It's a release of the pressure on. Oh, okay. I knew she was having trouble at school. So the teacher who was helping her was actually surprised that I was so calm. I'm like, well, yeah. I'm like, I understood what it meant. She wasn't trying to hurt herself, and it was just that overwhelm. And so then we went and got help. But it was just. And had I come in and said, don't, all that, I know she would have shut down, and who knows what would happen. But the teachers or the person at school who was to help the kids with the mental stuff had a higher reaction to it all.
Interesting.
Like, we need to take her to hospital and hospitalize her. I'm like, hold on a minute, I know she's been stressed at things, and let's back it down and go get mental help. So
that's awesome. That's awesome to hear because just from and I think it's easier said than done. But if you can remain calm and like kind of normalize the situation, that's gonna make the whole experience better. If you're reacting like, oh my God, we need to take care of this. This is terrible. What have you done? Oh my gosh, you need to stop doing that. That's just making it worse. So if you yeah, it sounds like you handle it beautifully.
It's fine now.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah, just school stress.
Let's see. Oopsie. All right. Oh yeah, what matters is keeping the person safe. So if there's, so taking poison, if there, any sort of head trauma or just, unconsciousness, if there's blood, that's a medical emergency. It doesn't matter what the intent was, whether it was, they weren't intending to kill themselves or not, or hurt themselves or not. Like, if that's life-threatening or if it's a serious medical emergency, that's important to get them to the hospital and get them to safety. So, where is this? All right, moving on to the G. What's the? No, sorry. L, we're on the L. L. So, what makes a good listener? Active listening. Using your ears. Yeah.
Keeping the focus on them.
Keeping the focus on them. Nice. Yeah.
That's some good listeners.
Repeating what they said.
Repeating what they said.
I heard this.
Yeah. Yeah. So this is just acceptance, genuineness, empathy, and then some things that you could see if you're attentive. Open body posture, being seated. Sometimes sitting direct opposite someone can be intimidating, so if you're just sitting side by side, might be more comfortable for somebody. All right, and G, giving reassurance and information. So what do you think, let's see, what's the difference between giving reassurance and information? What's the difference between that and giving advice?
Advice seems more personalized. Like, if I were you, I would. Whereas, like, giving reassurance and information kind of puts it in their hands instead of yours.
Yeah.
You should do this, or here's some options related to whatever you told me.
Right. Yeah.
Lets them choose too. Like, you don't know what's best for them. You can't
Right.
tell you what you should or shouldn't do. You're my friend.
Exactly.
That just gives you options when you have the power to choose for yourself.
Yeah.
Kind of reminds me of finding the strength.
There you go, yeah.
We talked about before, finding something that is positive for them.
Yeah.
Focusing on that.
Yeah, that's definitely that reassurance, for sure. Like, I know that you are, you're a very strong person. I've seen you overcome a lot of things. I think, you can get through this too. Yeah. Having realistic expectations, I think that's part of it. Is again, like, not giving advice or not saying you should do this or shouldn't do that, but having those realistic expectations that change isn't going to happen overnight. It's a process. Kind of recovery is a process. So you can't expect someone to change their behavior right away.
And giving them options, like both my kids, they're in high school, one's graduated. All the high school stress is so bad these days. Both of them had mental problems. You covered them. It was, I'm going to find the right person for you. So each of them took 3 or 4 people till I found the right fit, and then boom. So it's like, so if someone you don't know, here's a ton of options. One of these is going to feel right for you based on who you are. And not just one thing, because you're like, well, I must be nuts because this isn't working. That person doesn't get me.
Right. Yeah,
Get the right person.
That's a really good point. Is sometimes professionals, you don't click with them, and someone might think, well, I just, therapy doesn't work for me, but it could just be the wrong fit. So encouraging, like, let's try to find someone else, maybe.
And holistic and alternative. One of mine was like real hippie stuff, and
Yeah.
This is cool, and the other one was traditional, so it's like talking to friends like, oh, there's a whole other style of healing that's non-traditional, and both work for different people.
Nice, yeah. Nice. So we've talked about these. What do you think, are there any of these that you feel like would be hard for you?
To not do?
Yeah.
Maybe adopting an over-involved or overprotective attitude.
Depending on who the person is. Yeah.
Yeah. I feel like with if it was my sister, I'd be like, I want to be there all the time. Like, this is, that's my best friend. Like, I want to be there and just always have my eyes on them. And like, I can see how that would be different as opposed to like helping out like in the call center or something like that.
Definitely. Yeah.
And when they are healing or healed, that you're still looking for what's now not there anymore. Like, oh, well, they did this before, I'm going to keep going. That, like, I'm
Sure. Right, that could be annoying. Yeah. Yeah. Definitely. Yeah, and it's definitely it's good to be aware of like how you might treat someone differently based on your relationship with them. I think that sometimes we can, the helpful things to say lists that I give you, we might be more likely to say some of those horrible things, those unhelpful things to our family members just because of our relationship, with them. So
Tough love.
The tough love, yeah. Exactly. Yep. Yeah. When those are the people that really need us to be more compassionate. So these are the types of professional help you could get?
I missed out the energy healers. There's a whole other stack that
I think that's it's in other support
other professional supports.
That's just a cartoon about our thought process. The way we think can influence how we feel.
Cool. I can do something else.
And then encouraging self-help and other support strategies. So, I guess it's not on there. No. Energy healers, yeah. Like Reiki or
There's a whole stack of
crystals or
Body talk is something that's from Australia that I did like a protocol class on.
With Brooke or?
Well, I've been to Brooke a lot over the years, but she helped host one at the yoga studio by my old house. And so basically I'm qualified to practice, but not charge people for it. And it's like acute care, first aid for your energy. And that's a good self-help strategy. I could help, lead the class if we wanted to do one. It's basically assessing the brain and balancing all the cortices and using your hands really to touch these energetic points.
And then there's muscle testing. There's so much stuff.
And muscle testing for decision making and stuff. And it is self-care, self-help type stuff. But it's also for first aid. Basically, like it's letting your brain know that you have an injury that it needs to heal, so it stops producing symptoms such as bruising, bleeding, all these things that some people go into shock when they see. It basically snaps your brain back into recovery mode and starts to address it. So, and then it's related to stress and your nervous system can be reset. Fluorescent lights actually can cause your nervous system to go into crisis mode. So you're not really functioning optimally. So.
Wow.
It's like
so many things, yeah.
There's so much more out there, and people don't know when you're supporting people. Yeah, you need to know there's just so much more.
Well, I think what's important about that though too is that those are also professionals, and just with like self-help and other support strategies, those can be really great on their own. But if somebody has like severe anxiety or severe depression, seeing a counselor and having these evidence-based practices, that's really what's going to help somebody recover. This is going to help too, but it's really
There's just no evidence yet, though.
I know.
Yeah,
no, that's a good point.
Yeah.
That's a really good point too.